Quality, comfort, and grip at an affordable price. Whether it's our standard, pro, or elite socks, there's an option for everyone. Try a pair for yourself now at puregripsocks.com.
The nostalgia merchants over at Adidas have struck once again, this time a new pair of Messi boots that might just be the most polarizing ones yet. Open up the box and you'll find that you get the extra set of comfort insoles that are basically identical to the ones inside the boots, minus a couple perforations. Nonetheless, it's cool that they include an extra set. And of course, you also get a string bag, which is more or less the same as all the other Messi colorways. This, of course, in coordinating colors. Messi on the one side, am I holding that upside down? Messi on the one side in like this reddish orange color. The bag itself is white with black detailing, and his logo on the opposite, black strings on the bag. It gets a string bag rating of 32 out of F50.7. And then of course you get the boots themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the Messi version of the F50 Elite in the new Prestigio colorway, the I and O in Prestigio being Messi's number 10, as Adidas really likes to do. And as you can very clearly see, these have a drastically different look compared to all past Messi F50s of the current generation. With the new graphics being inspired by F50 models that were available between 2007 and 2009, which would have all been F50 Tunits with the interchangeable studs, which is kind of funny because while Messi wore what looked to be F50 Tunits, he actually wore heavily modified takedown model F30s with a fixed sole plate and stud pattern. Where if you either love or hate these graphics, the 2007 F50.7 Tunit is more or less the one to blame, because when you look at the two side by side, it's pretty clear to see where the inspiration came from. If anything, the graphics on the new ones are actually a little bit busy, and because they're so drastically different from what Adidas has previously had on this model, it makes it look almost like an entirely different football boot. And just for fun, and because it's really cool and you just don't see it very often, here is the Climacool variation of the F50.7 Tunit that doesn't have the lace cover, where as you can see side by side with this new Messi boot, they have some strong similarities. However, Messi himself never wore this version of the F50. I actually don't think any pros did, for that matter. It's actually kind of dumb. It's a really thin laminated plastic with holes throughout the entire upper and actual holes in the forefoot and heel of the sole plate that was supposed to make for breathability, but if there was any drop of moisture in the ground, your feet were getting wet. Love or hate the new graphics, however, it has impacted the physical structure of the Messi F50 to the point where these do legitimately feel different than past colorways. It's not a huge difference, but a difference nonetheless. Where if you'd like to learn what they've changed, what's exactly the same, and whether or not this is a better or worse variation of the Messi F50 for you specifically, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in today's review. So if you're interested in learning more, including how they fit and feel on feet, which again is a little bit different than past Messi F50s, please stick around, watch the entire review. And if you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes via the first link down below. And really quickly before we get started, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to drop a like on the video. And if you appreciate the unsponsored, unsugar-coated, brutally honest opinions on this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2025. One more quick comment / personal opinion on the new colorway and graphics is that I think it looks really good. The graphics as a whole give this a very old school look compared to past F50 Messi colorways of this generation, and the white, silver, black, and kind of reddish orange detailing as a color combination all looks really cool. However, if you're going to make a callback to the F50.7.8 and 0.9, wouldn't it only make sense to pick a colorway that people actually remember Messi wearing? Where maybe I'm completely off on this because Messi would have been very young at the time and maybe not necessarily on everybody's radar to the extent that he is now, but if Adidas didn't write Messi right here on the side of the upper, I probably wouldn't guess that these were Messi signature football boots. Where when I personally think of Messi wearing F50 Tunits, even though he technically wore F30s, in the 0.7 generation, what comes to mind are the silver ones with the blue lace cover. He obviously had the blue ones with the light blue clear heel for the 0.8s, and then going to the F50.9, he once again had the silver with the blue stripes. Any one of those, in my opinion, probably would have made a lot more sense, but on the same note, Adidas already put out a pair of Messi silver F50s in the 98 Mercurial R9 colorway. So they probably didn't want to drop a second silver pair. A bit of a shame in my opinion, because I think that color combo would look really cool with these new graphics, but maybe we'll get it in the future. Other than aesthetics though, this new graphic does actually change the physical fit of the football boots, the way that they feel on feet, and to a certain extent the way that they feel on the ball because of the way that they've routed the micro texturing. The one thing that really stands out to me when you put these on as being different from past colorways is this kind of punched in embossed line that now runs kind of on a wavy curve through the midfoot and then cuts off basically dead center of the toe box. There's a little bit of relief right there, and then you're going to get a similar wavy curve on the inside of the upper. If you look at a normal Messi colorway, or at least past variations of this generation of F50, you actually have that punch line kind of bordering the bottom edge of the upper, creating this kind of rim along the bottom, which is obviously a nod to the OG 2010 F50 Adizero, but that little embossed punched in line actually does add a little bit of structure, or at least creates a pressure point when you have the boots on your feet, where I think it's very noticeable with the Messi F50s that you just have a little bit of added structure around the bottom edges of the upper compared to how everything else feels from that border up. On this new pair, however, the border is a lot less significant, and it changes the way that this upper is able to move and wrap your foot, particularly in the toe box area. I found, and maybe this is just a bit of manufacturing tolerance issues on Adidas' part, but I think that this actually feels a little bit wider, a little bit more rounded, and a little bit higher volume, particularly in the toes, compared to past Messi F50 colorways, which personally I think feels at least a little bit better. We're not talking about a major change here, but certainly the way that this Hybrid Touch 2.0 synthetic is constructed is a little bit different on this new colorway. The other thing that changes is the Sprint Web micro texturing on the surface that I would argue is just a little bit more significant on this new colorway, similar to how we've seen with the refresh of the regular F50 in that Road to Glory pack that also looks really good in the white, black, gold, and purple. What you find on this particular colorway, and maybe it's a little bit difficult to see on video, is streaking micro texture following the graphics. You have it within the Adidas stripes themselves, and it goes all the way to the middle of the forefoot. There's a little bit of relief right here where it's just that smooth leather, but every other part of the upper has really significant and really rough micro texturing. The only part that doesn't is the silver border kind of in the midfoot area, but then again, as you get into the forefoot, you can see it comes back in and you just have that really rough texturing on the surface, basically at the entire front part of the foot, where if you compare that to, again, past colorways, you have a lot of that in kind of the upper section of the upper, even in the Adidas stripes here through the midfoot. But then as you get into the forefoot, this entire graphic does not have any of that micro texture, nor will you find it anywhere in the lower part of the toe box and forefoot area, which again isn't necessarily a good or bad thing, but you'll definitely find with this new graphic that this grabs the ball just that little bit more aggressively. It's not necessarily a sticky type of grip like you might find from a grip knit from Nike, but certainly the abrasiveness of this Sprint Web micro texture is very noticeable on the ball, and the friction does legitimately give you that sense of control in terms of just having that little bit of extra grab. Other than that, the upper is still, like I mentioned, Hybrid Touch 2.0, which is a little bit thicker and definitely softer in feel compared to the Fiber Touch that you'll find on the normal variations of the F50 that offer a little bit more of a bare barefoot feel. That's not to say that these are so padded where they don't feel like speed boots. They're still very much on the thinner side, but they have a little bit more of that leather-like quality in terms of giving you just that little bit of padding to take the edge off on the ball. The laces still run down the middle, and of course, you are going to find that signature Messi burrito style tongue that's detached from the inside, making putting these on and taking them off as easy as it gets within the entire F50 lineup. And in general, I just really like this aspect of the Messi version of the F50 in particular. Heel liner is exactly the same amount of padding, same insole, same shaping as a whole, although like I mentioned earlier, the fit is a little bit different. We'll talk about that later in the video. And then as far as the Sprint Frame 360 sole plate is concerned, that too remains unchanged compared to all variations of the F50. The same goes for the FG stud pattern, where for the Messi version in particular, unlike other F50 variants, it's only available with that FG stud pattern. And then just for the sake of leaving no stone unturned, let's weigh the latest graphic to the previous graphic, both in the same size 9.5 US, both F50 Elites, just to see if there's any difference. We'll start off with the previous one in the Miami colorway. They weigh in at 7.1 ounces, the equivalent of 201 grams. Change the scale back to ounces, and we'll throw on the new Messi graphic, and you can see that they weigh in at 7 ounces, the equivalent of 199 grams. That's a 2 gram weight difference in favor of the latest model. So is it possible that it is a smidge lighter? Yes, but 2 grams is such a small amount of weight. I would almost chalk that down to, again, manufacturing tolerances, where I'm sure if you weighed 10 pairs of these and 10 pairs of these, they would all be within 1 or 2 grams up or down. Regardless, if you're buying a pair of elite tier Messi F50s, they're going to be light. When it comes to the fit and feel on feet, I definitely think there's a difference compared to past colorways. However, those differences are very, very small, and unless you have some pretty extensive experience with past Messi F50 colorways, I'm not sure that any of these differences are going to be that impactful for you. In other words, it's probably not worth it to upgrade to this pair if you have a pair that is not in need of replacing. What I will say regarding this colorway though, is the top-down view when you have them on feet is pretty spectacular. The design as a whole, I could see why a lot of people might not like it, but when you have them on and you look down at your feet, it is a very cool view. The graphics just look fantastic. As far as the differences are concerned, I'd make the argument that the Hybrid Touch upper, for whatever reason, feels a little bit firmer out of the box on these compared to past colorways. Again, the difference is extremely minor, and I don't think they've actually made any major changes to the material itself. It's just, again, that kind of embossed line around the bottom being in a slightly different spot. That just adds structure to the upper, maybe a little bit higher up. However, because there is less structure to the upper, a little bit lower down in the toe box area, I just think that this boot has a little bit of a nicer shape in that front toe box forefoot section of the foot, which again, I think your mileage may vary depending on the specific shape of your feet, but for me personally, I really like the way that these fit. The difference, once again, is extremely minor. I think a lot of people wouldn't even be able to tell a difference, but for me, I do like the changes because of the minor construction difference that has ultimately been caused by the graphic change. As far as overall width and comfort is concerned, these are going to be definitely the widest variation of the F50 along with past colorways. That Hybrid Touch 2.0 synthetic material is just a little bit more forgiving than the slightly more plastic, more structured Fiber Touch synthetic you'll find on all the other F50 variants. And of course, that burrito style tongue just allows for a much easier opening of the upper that makes it more accommodating for a slightly wider foot type. If you have extremely wide feet, I'm not necessarily sure that the F50 in general is a fantastic option, but as long as you like that snug overall fit, I think these will work well for most foot types. And as far as sizing is concerned, I wear my usual size 9.5 US in all variations of the F50, and the length is pretty much perfect. My toes are as close to the end as they can possibly be. So for the vast majority of people, if you are looking to get a pair for yourself, like past colorways of the current generation F50, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. But there you have it. it. Another slight refresh to the F50 lineup, this time the Messi variation. I'm not sure if we're going to get more colorways with this graphics package. That, of course, remains to be seen. But as it is right now, this particular pair might just be my personal favorite version of the Messi F50, which was already one of my favorite boots of 2025.